Hey folks, welcome to the Archetype of Man channel. I'm Nick, and today we're going to answer the question, do you actually need a light on your carry gun? Before we get started, I want to say welcome if you're new to the channel, and welcome back if you've been following me for a while. If you have been following me for a while, you no doubt have heard me and probably seen me advocate keeping a light on your carry gun. My mindset on that has changed over the years. We'll just cut straight to the chase here. I used to think that you absolutely had to keep a light on whatever gun you carry because it's dark half the day, this, that, or the other. You have to make positive identification. There's a lot of stuff that, while true, doesn't necessarily mean that you need a light on your concealed carry gun, which I know I have the M9A3 on me. That's not my macro that's in the house. I should have brought it out. And while I have carried this Beretta M9A3, this isn't so much what you think of when you think of concealed carry. Sometimes it is something like the SIG P365X macro with the TLR7A on it or something like that. And while I still have a carry setup, and a couple of them actually that have weapons lights, I have kind of shifted my opinion that it's not something that's strictly required anymore. Some of you may have figured out or followed along or are just now hearing about, this is my carry most days. This is a Ruger LCR-X in 327 Federal mag, loaded with 32 H&R mag. I have a whole video on that that I will have floating up there or in the description. Most days, this is what I carry. It's a 6-shot revolver, shoots a decent little fast round. You get 6 rounds instead of 5, like you would with a 38 or 357, but you'll note no light on it. Why is that? Well, number one, I always have a handheld light in my pocket. This is a Streamlight wedge. Sometimes I use a Surefire stiletto. So I don't look at it as mandatory at all, because depending on what I'm doing that day, where I am going, and the time of day that I'm going to be out, that has a lot to do with what I choose. Like I said, most days this is what I carry, and then I have a speed strip with some additional rounds. The likelihood of needing the additional rounds, slim to none. Most likely you're going to deal with whatever's in the gun or on the gun, and that's going to be it. The chances of needing a reload as a civilian are slim. It's not something that's very common, but it makes me feel better. So that's my little good luck charm, if you will, that I keep some extra rounds and a speed strip in my pocket. That's what I carry 99% of the time. And I do landscaping for work. I can live with that gun. I can bend, I can weed eat, I can cut grass. It's also a perfectly viable option for venomous snakes if I need it. But if I'm going to go down to Atlanta, or if I'm going on a long road trip into unknown areas with my family, I will often opt for something like the P365X macro, where I have a red dot sight on the pistol. I do have a light. I have higher capacity. So the higher the chances are of dealing with unknowns or having other people dependent on me, then I want some additional options, some additional features and things like that. I absolutely believe it is mandatory, if you want to use that word for anything, to have some sort of quality illumination option on your person, aka a good flashlight. And I have used this light almost without fail daily, at least once since I started carrying a light. This light, any light. Having a good flashlight just gives you options. Most of the time, nothing to do with self-defense, just using it for stuff. Looking for something in the back seat of the truck, underneath the seat. The cargo light, the interior lights in the truck may not work that well. Or working on something, getting underneath the mower, checking stuff. A good flashlight's crazy useful. And I'd say that even if you are going to continue to carry a weapons light as part of your daily routine, a good handheld is still mandatory. Because with a good handheld, I can look for stuff and I'm not putting anything at risk using this light. Now, the minute I try to rely on a weapons light to look for stuff, I am pointing a hopefully loaded gun at anything that I'm trying to look for. Not good, not safe. So even if you have a weapons light, you still need a handheld. So what that does, by just going to the handheld, can you shoot with just a handheld? Sure you can. There's the FBI thing over here. I hate that one. There's the Harry's technique if you have to. Needs some work, you got to practice with it, but it's still a lot easier to live with. It's a lot more realistic. So I'm not trying to say don't use a weapons light. If you want to, sure, by all means, just make sure you use a quality one. And if that's what works for you, great, because sometimes I still use one. But the mindset that it's mandatory or you're somehow going to get killed in the streets if you don't have a weapons light is, well, it's kind of ludicrous. And I realize that that's not always the position I have held on the channel. So there is a good bit of crow eating going on here. If you followed me for a while, you may be doing a double take. I don't look at it as mandatory anymore. People evolve, thoughts evolve, mindsets change. I'm open to disagreement. If you want to leave that in the comments, that's fine. But I do think that a lot of it is based on marketing. And don't get me wrong, we're fortunate that weapons lights have evolved the way they have, that you can carry something like a TLR7 with, there's more light output and stuff in that little light than there were in full-size weapons lights a few years ago. And I think that is a good thing for all of us. I think that lights on your home defense gun is a different topic, and one I'd be open to covering more in depth in another video. But as far as lights on your carry gun, guys, whether you carry something like this Appendix, this is a cool gun, by the way, and there's also a video on this Gideon Optics Alpha, and I'll put together a little playlist for you on this. If you're going to carry something like this, more power to you. If you can live with that and you can conceal that, and more importantly, you are accurate and the firearm's reliable and you shoot it well, no problem, carry it. If you are like me and are just a young FUD, I guess, and you want to carry an LCR, J-frame, or what have you, I need to actually put some oil on this. You can tell I do landscaping in Georgia in the summer because I have rust spots popping up on it every so often. Then this makes sense too. At the end of the day, guys, carry what you shoot well, carry what you're willing to put the time in and practice with. But please, if you don't want to carry a weapons light, don't feel like you have to. Make a realistic risk assessment of the things that you are likely to run into and your comfort level using a Harry's technique or something like that to shoot, or if you really want to have that on your carry gun and have both hands on the gun, that's fine too. But I do think that you should still have some sort of handheld with you. And some folks are going to say this isn't even a good handheld, but again, it's what I can live with. It gives me reasonable illumination for the environments I'm in, situations I'm most likely to be in. So there is that. The most important thing though, I think, is having some means to look around and see who's who, who's doing what. Because the last thing you want to do is end up in a situation where you use deadly force on somebody that didn't need deadly force. Or conversely, if you don't use deadly force and you needed to, that may not be a problem you have to dwell on for too long. We are fortunate that there's been a ton of advancements in the self-defense world, and we are also unfortunate that sometimes the loudest voices in the room aren't necessarily the ones most qualified to give you advice. And I know that's ironic coming from me on this channel. I'm just sharing with you how my opinion has changed and kind of why it has changed. There are folks infinitely more knowledgeable than me to give you advice on the topic. There are people like John Correa with Active Self-Protection who has analyzed tens of thousands of self-defense encounters. He would be able to give you a much more comprehensive opinion based on that than I am. I'm just telling you what works for me and why I changed my opinion, and why after so long of saying you gotta have a light on your carry gun, I don't. It's not me really being a hypocrite so much as admitting that I didn't know then what I know now. My life now isn't the same as it was then. Circumstances change and you're allowed to change your mind. So just be upfront about it. But yeah, don't fall for it. If you're sitting there, you're like, oh God, I gotta have a light on my carry gun. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And at the end of the day, the only one that can really make that decision is you. So good handheld though, I can't stress that enough. That's just useful. You leave all the tactical self-defense stuff out of it. Useful little gizmo. And where we live in the country, if you will, we have power outages every time there's serious storms. I'm never caught without a light. Even if the power goes out at 11 at night, I got a light floating around somewhere. So some of the stuff we need to carry on us the most isn't the most fun to talk about, but is absolutely a good thing to have. So weigh in with your opinions down in the comments. If you enjoyed this discussion and you like firearms and things like that, and it's your first time here, please consider subscribing. And if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. And I'll close by giving a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. You guys rock. It's never something you have to do, but I'm grateful that you do it, and it means a lot to me that you do. So if you're interested in doing that, there will be links out in the description. I appreciate all of you. Guys, stay safe, train with whatever your situation is. A low light course would be a great idea for anybody, myself included, whether you want to use a handheld light or a weapons light or a combination of both. That's a really good experience, and it's a really good eye-opening thing for you to kind of test your gear and figure out what works and some of the misconceptions. I can tell you that first misconception I had was that it would be like shooting in the daytime, and it's not. When that powder smoke comes out and hits the light, whether you're using a handheld or a weapons mounted light, when the smoke from the shot goes off, it does obfuscate a lot of what's going on down there. And it really drives home a point about having quality light, but even then there's only so much that you can do. Anyways, topic for another day. Guys, train with whatever you carry. Make well-informed decisions based on your needs, not just marketing hype. And I'll see you next time.